When I was about 12 or 13, I lived on a farm in a small country town. For perspective, our primary school was kindergarten to year 6 and had 55 to about 60 kids. The next town over was only a 15-minute drive up the road but had a police station and a pub, although their school was slightly smaller. One of those country areas where everybody knew everybody. Anyway, I was friends with the family that owned the pub, as the girl was my age. I had stayed the weekend and I was waiting in the courtyard for my nan to come pick me up. The courtyard was just a few picnic tables out the front of the pub, with some logs as a fence that cars pulled off the road and parked in front of. A car that I've never seen before pulled into the car park in front of me. They then sat there a minute, then yelled at me. "Hey, you need a lift?" "No thank you, I'm just waiting for a lift. They're on their way," I told him. But he still kept going. "Are you sure? Which way are you headed?" "No, really, I'm fine, thank you. They're on the way," I said. He didn't seem to take no easily, but my lift arrived within a minute or two later. It was my nan, and I didn't mention what had happened as I didn't want to stress her out and I thought it was over. Home was just a straight 15-minute drive along one road and then our driveway up to our farm. Our driveway was about 100 meters long with no trees or anything, and the front of the house was all windows, so you could see our kitchen and lounge quite well if you stopped. Well, as soon as we got home, I went straight to the front of the house, and I had saw car headlights coming from the direction of the pub. They actually stopped at the bottom of the driveway. They would have been able to see me in the window. I was frozen, unsure of what to do. My grandfather and dad also lived with us. They're both well over 6 foot tall and they're farmers. My dad walked out, saw me at the window, and also saw the car headlights. He then asked if I was okay. I wasn't sure what to say, but I just answered yes, that I'm fine, right as the car did a U-turn and then drove back the way it came. I'm very thankful that my father was home that day. Otherwise, who knows what that strange man may have done or what he had planned. I'm a truck driver, and I've been a truck driver for over 15 years. My name is Jay, and I'm a very small guy at only about 5'4", weighing about 150 pounds. This will become important later on. For the most part, this has been a really good job. I run a truck route for a freight company every night, Sunday through Thursday. My route runs from Wichita, Kansas to Stratford, Texas. I usually stopped at the same fuel station in Oklahoma on my way back every night. These details become relevant in the story later on. I met a driver in Stratford and switched trucks with him to take back to my terminal. Well, on this particular night, my coworker left me a truck without much fuel in it, and I ended up stopping in a fuel station I was unfamiliar with in Texas. The first thing that I noticed at this fuel station was that there weren't many people around. Of course, that would seem normal at this time of night, but this was a truck stop. It was an older truck stop, and the lighting was barely adequate, but I've never had any trouble before. As I was fueling my truck, the hair stood up on the back of my neck like someone was watching me. I casually glanced around, but I saw no one. As I got done at the pump, I had proceeded to walk inside to use the restroom, get something to drink, and then get my receipt for the fuel. I noticed 2 large, disheveled-looking men walking towards the entrance a little way behind me. Now, this isn't particularly unusual due to the fact that this was a truck stop. I went in and decided to get the bathroom break out of the way. As I was using the urinal, 2 large men then stepped behind me. I got really nervous and then said, "Look man, I'll be done in a minute." The 2 large men then started laughing and then said that if I didn't struggle, it would only take them a minute as well. I had started to sweat and was trying to think of a way out of this, not wanting to turn around. I was trying to be discreet about getting my pants back in order when one of the men then pinned me against the wall. He then whispered in my ear, "Look kid, You're only gonna make this hard on yourself. To which I then cried out, Nah man, fuck you! And I then tried unpinning one part of my body to fight back, but they were way too big for me. The other man then started to pull down my pants and undo his at the same time. I could feel his manhood pressed against me, and I was clenching my cheeks as hard as I could. I then heard one of them say to the other one, Hurry up, we don't have much time, and I want my turn as well. Being fully naked from the waist down, I thought this was the end. But to my surprise, one of the employees walked into the restroom and then said, What the fuck's going on here? I'm calling the cops right now. And he then darted from the restroom. It was at that moment that the one that was pinning me down loosened his hold on me slightly, and I was able to get away. They then peered at me, saying, This isn't over. Then they darted from the restroom. After I got myself together, I then came to the cash register and then thanked the employee for saving me. I eventually gave a description to the cops of the two large men. I also called dispatch at my job and reported to them that I had an altercation. I will never stop at a fuel station again unless it's a large, well-known one, and I really hope to never see those same two assholes again. At the time of this harrowing tale, I was a mere 18-year-old residing in the sunny state of Florida. Our cozy abode, a small house, was the hub of our family of 5, including my 2 beloved brothers. Life was a joyous adventure, filled with shared laughter and cherished moments. On that day, my family embarked on a journey to visit their friends in New York, leaving me behind. Initially, I had felt a sense of independence, a taste of freedom. Little did I know this would be the last time I would willingly choose solitude. While watching TV, my family called to inform me that they had arrived at the airport. I missed them but understood their desire to have a great time with their friends. I hoped they would all have a great time. As night fell, I was excited to play on my PlayStation and started to get up to grab the controller when I had heard a noise from the side. I looked over but saw nothing, so I dismissed it as my imagination and continued with my plan. I turned on Minecraft and made a new world. I like to play creative but decided to play survival to see how I would do on it. I was doing really great finding food and creating a small base to keep myself safe when I heard it again. My heart raced and I slammed my hand on the couch, went to the front door, and then looked outside. But then over to my neighbor's fence, there was a tall black figure staring at me, and he then jumped over the wall and ran towards me. I then slammed the door shut, my hands trembling, and I then got a knife for safety. But then I had heard him actually break the door, and then he shouted, "I will find you, and you will be sorry." I don't know what I did wrong, and we had never gone to his home and talked to him. I didn't even know who he was. I'm one of the friendliest people in the neighborhood, so I was really scared and just hoping for the best, but he didn't find me. I called 911 and the operator told me the cops would be there within 10 minutes. While I was panicking, I could hear him smearing something on the wall. I didn't know what it was, but I was thinking of the worst. I wanted to get it out of my head, but it wasn't working. Shortly after, I could then hear the sirens as the cops arrived and entered the house. The sound was like a beacon of hope, a promise of safety amid my terror. They then called me, and I exited the bathroom and felt relief. But I did still feel scared, and I didn't want to come out of the bathroom. They ended up telling me that they couldn't find anyone. Then he left. I was really scared, so I ended up calling my parents telling them what happened, and they ended up cutting their trip short and coming back home. We now live in Texas, and I feel so much relief knowing that he may never find us, and that is what I really hope for. To this very day, this terrifying experience is etched into my memory like a scar. It's a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beyond our doors, and it's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. I'm a 26-year-old female. This story is from when I was in high school. It's not the scariest story, and honestly, I thought it was just a funny story until I told my husband about it a few months ago. I grew up in a college town in Oklahoma. There wasn't much for high schoolers to do there. Most weekends, a group of friends would just get together and we would all go hang out at the park. And one night it was getting late and many of our friends had left, so my best friend C and I were going back to her car. As we talked and walked back, we had noticed a red Prius with tinted windows in the parking lot. C had asked if I knew anyone who drove a Prius, but I said no. We figured it was just someone from the group that we hadn't noticed. C was giving me a ride back to my house to get clothes and to stay with her. I live on the other side of town, and as we left the parking lot, the Prius started to leave too. I noticed the Prius was going the same way when we were out of the neighborhood. C said they probably lived in a different neighborhood and they're just leaving like us. I calmed down and went back to texting on my phone. We got about halfway to my house when C said that she thought that the Prius was still following us because we were now close to the other side of town. I said don't turn on your blinker and then turn right instead of going straight. And that's what we did, and it did the same. Weird, but nothing too bad. The Prius followed us all the way to my house. When we pulled into my drive-thru though, it then slowly drove on past. We figured that it had to be someone from school. After leaving my house to head back to C's house, we realized again that the same red Prius was behind us at the red light. I told her that it was probably Kay from the swim team, showing her that he had just gotten a new red Prius on Instagram, although his windows were not tinted. As we got to the house, the Prius had stopped at a house down and then turned off its lights as we got out of the car and then went inside. After we got inside, we then ran up to the guest room and then peeked out of the windows. It was still there, only this time it was now right in front of her house. Both of us a little nervous, we had kept the lights in the guest room off, and eventually the Prius turned on its lights and then finally drove away. The Prius would circle the neighborhood and then stop in front of C's house a few times, and then it was finally gone. The next morning, there was actually a thank you balloon tied to her car mirror. For many more months, this happened every weekend that we hung out, but then it would happen on C's way to dance or me after going to the gym. It was very strange, but nothing else happened, so we just kept it to ourselves. My husband had asked why we never told our parents, and honestly, it was just kinda creepy, but nothing bad had ever actually happened. But whoever was in that Prius knew where we lived and had learned our schedules, but they had never actually confronted us. He told me that it was scary and that something serious really could have happened. I guess I'm just really glad that it didn't. I asked C if she remembered the red Prius and the random balloons we would receive. She said yes, and this still creeps her out to this day. I have a best friend who lives on the opposite side of our street within walking distance. At 5 p.m. in Louisville, Kentucky, it's dark with daylight savings time in January. We're always up to something, so you just never know what time it may be when we're popping back and forth on foot or in car. We both practice situational awareness despite being night owls. I always carry if I know I'll be anywhere after dark. Because of the January icky moist cold weather and darkness, I drove my car to her house, parking at her side door. She never uses the front door since her house is on a really steep hill. I always call when I'm in her driveway when I visit, and she always double checks by looking out. This night her landline, I wish to God that she'd ditch, rang the second I arrived. As always, I'd locked up the car and entered her side door, and we locked her door and then sat a while in the kitchen at the table and just talked and laughed. She lets the call go to be answered by the machine. It just hung up. We talked about how every night I pop over, someone calls as if they're watching her house, which is true day or night. She won't get caller ID because of the expense. On this night, the caller kept on calling but saying nothing, so I told her I'd talk to them. I listened, though they had never spoke when I picked up the phone without speaking, but I did hear a very low volume TV in the room. The person hung on the line for several minutes. Finally, I spoke in a low, deliberate tone, saying, "I know who you are and where you are, and why you're calling. Stop." After our visit, I remarked that it seemed to have stopped the damn calls. Good. Since she's alone, I figured that a different voice answering might confuse them. When I got into my car, I had sped home 4 houses down and parked as always in my garage. My car felt weird as hell. Looking down, I saw that all 4 tires had no air in them at all. Someone had just been on the other side of that door when we were chatting it up, letting my tires out. Had I hit a main road, I'd have totally lost control of my car with all the hills around here. I filled up my tires the next day, driving straight to a Valvoline. They told me that they were so low on air that it was really dangerous for me to have come just the short distance that I did. I told the employee who helped me that he should have seen them before that I pumped in so much air. What gets me too was that I could have opened the side door right by my car that night, and he could have stood right there waiting for me. I would have been totally unable to drive away fast or far. I would have broken down and would have been at his mercy. Something's definitely going on in this neighborhood. So a few nights ago, I took my feisty terrier mix out to pee, and she barked 3 doors down at a woman dropping the last vestige of trash into her dumpster before early pickup the next day. What I didn't know as I crossed the street was that it wasn't her my dog was barking at, but a creepy looking hoodie guy with tricolor long hair creeping down my street. I'd realized that I never picked up my mail, and so I was just going to check it. I damn near walked into his arms. You know the feeling you get when someone's near you? Well, I didn't have it. It was like he was in stealth mode or something. Only my dog was onto him, and had put up such a loud barrage of yapping that had made him stop for a brief second or I'd have run into him. He was about 23 if I'd had to guess. He was also tall and slim as hell. He was in that black hoodie in the dark, and just slinking slowly about with no light reflector or excuse me. It was really startling. Then to cap it off, I was standing talking to our young neighbors across the street when an older, creepy, long gray-haired woman slowly walked past my block and then stopped right in front of my neighbor's friend's house. We talked with both neighbors for 5 entire minutes, and this woman in a scarf staring at my friend's driveway up the steep hill. I excused myself and then said, "Hi, we live here. I saw you stop and thought maybe you needed something." She looked at me as if I had accused her of something, but my tone was super friendly. "No," she said. "I was just walking." I walked back to my yard to finish up our conversation, which my neighbor then said, "This makes 10 minutes that she stood still right there." Well, later that night, after about 30 minutes, I wanted to swap out the Christmas wreath for a different one. I did so quickly on the side door, but the front wreath was now already gone. Someone had stolen it. I looked all around the yard, and there was nowhere that it could have been. That's when I recalled the strange woman having an earbud in. Maybe she had been talking to someone, staring, making a plan. I just don't know, but it's really scary to think of what their next move might have been. Hey everyone, that's about it for today's stories. If you have your own story that you would like to send, you can send it in at southerncannibal.com, or you can email it at southerncannibalstories@gmail.com. I look forward to telling your story. Have a good night or good day, everyone. And remember to always stay